Well, hello everybody and welcome to Chef's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make a rye sandwich loaf. So this is going to use rye flour and some bread flour, so some white bread flour to make this sandwich loaf. If you use all rye flour, because of the lack of gluten in that flour, the dough would be very, very dense indeed, almost like the German pumpernickel style bread. But putting the bread flour into it, you can actually make a very nice sandwich loaf. And in common with lots of rye bread recipes, I'm going to use some caraway seeds, which I have crushed slightly. I prefer them to be crushed a little bit. And some black treacle or molasses. That gives a lovely flavour to the bread. So it's not a difficult recipe, but obviously because it's a leavened dough, it's going to take time because you have to give the dough time to proof twice, once before you shape it and once it's in the tin. And I'm going to use a 9" by 5" a 2-pound loaf tin, but if you don't have a loaf tin, you can do this free form. You can just form the dough into a log of about the same dimensions, and that will bake up quite nicely. So with that said, let's go on to the ingredients. And for this I have 175 grams, which is 1¼ cups plus 1½ tablespoons of rye flour. And you can use the dark rye flour or the light rye flour, it's entirely up to you. I have 230 grams, that's 1½ cups plus 3 tablespoons, based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of strong white bread flour. I have 250 milliliters, 1 cup plus 2 teaspoons of lukewarm water. I have 7 grams, 2¼ teaspoons or 1 packet of instant yeast. 22 grams, 1 tablespoon of black treacle or molasses. 9 grams, 1 tablespoon of dried onion, which I have crushed a little bit to make the flakes slightly smaller. I have 6 grams, 1 teaspoon of salt. 6 grams, 2 teaspoons of caraway seeds, which, as I said, I have ground them down a little bit. They're still gritty or grainy, but I've ground them down a little bit. And I have 25 grams, 1¾ tablespoons of oil. You could use melted butter if you wanted to. So that's all the ingredients. So we need to go on to make the dough. And I'm going to use my stand mixer. It's going to be the easiest way. And you can use whichever stand mixer you have. So I'm going to put my water into the bowl of the stand mixer. And I'm going to put the oil in as well. And the black treacle or the molasses. And I'll put the yeast in as well. And then I'm just going to give those a little mix around just to get those combined. So that's good like that. So I'll just move that to one side for a moment. And I'm going to put my rye flour, my bread flour, salt, caraway seeds and onion into a bowl, and I'm just going to give those all a good stir around. That's good enough. So then I'm going to put that into the wet mixture and mix that until it becomes a shaggy dough, just on a low speed to start with. And I'll put it in, I'll start off with about half and then I'll add the remainder. And that's fairly quickly almost come together. So I'm now going to knead that, and it's going to be a stiff dough, but I'm going to knead that until it all comes together into a smooth but slightly tacky dough. And that can take a good few minutes, depending on which mixer you're using and what speed you're able to work at. It can take a different amount of time. So I've kneaded that probably for about 8 minutes, and it's slightly tacky, but it's nice and smooth. So I'm just going to take that out of the bowl and form it into a ball. So there's my dough, and I'm just going to knead that and turn it over on itself. Like that, and form that into a ball. Like that. And then I'm going to put that back into the bowl. You can put it into a greased bowl. I have a lid for this bowl, so I'm going to put it in and cover it with my lid. Like that. And I'm going to leave that until it has risen to about double in size, and that can take 1 to 2 hours depending on the temperature of the room. I want it to be a little bit puffy, and once it's about double in size and a little bit puffy, I'll come back and I'll go on to the next step, which is to slightly deflate it, shape it and put it into the loaf pan. So I've proofed this rye bread dough for just over 2 hours, and it did double in size and it puffed up. There were some bubbles on the top. I've slightly deflated it, taking it out of the bowl. So I'm going to form that into a sort of oval shape like that, and then I'm going to fold it down like that into a pointed end and turn that over into the centre. And I'm going to do the same with the other end and fold that over as well like that. And then I'm going to roll that and squeeze it together. And I'm simply going to put that into a 9x5" tin, which I have lightly greased. My tin doesn't actually need greasing, but I have lightly greased it. And I'm just going to fold the end over a little bit and put that in the tin like that. And then I'm going to leave it to proof again, and I'm going to cover that with some lightly greased plastic, and I'm going to leave it to proof until it is at least an inch over the top of the tin. And as that time comes to an end, I will preheat my oven to 180 degrees Celsius, 160 Celsius with the fan, 350 Fahrenheit. So I'll come back once this has risen up above the top of the loaf tin, and I'll show it to you before I put it into the oven. So I've let my rye bread dough rise in the pan for about an hour and 3/4, and it's now well up above the top of the pan by about 1.25 to 1.5 inches. So I'll show you what it looks like. So you can see it's risen up quite nicely there, and I have my oven preheated, so I'm going to put that into the oven now, and I'm going to bake it for about 35 minutes. I'll test the internal temperature, and I want that to reach about 89 degrees Celsius, which is about 192 Fahrenheit, and that will then tell me that the loaf is cooked all the way through. So then I'll take it out of the oven and transfer it to a wire rack and allow it to cool down. Now I might brush a little bit of butter on the top just to keep the crust nice and soft for me, but once it's cooled down I'll come back and show you the result, and I'll have a taste. I baked my rye sandwich loaf for 35 minutes and it came up to temperature. So I took it out of the oven and took it out of the tin and onto a wire rack. I did brush a little bit of butter over the top, which has made the crust nice and soft. So I've now sliced it, and I'll show you what it looks like. And it's baked up quite nicely. As I mentioned, there's little or no gluten in rye flour, so the rise comes entirely from the yeast and the gluten in the wheat flour. But it looks very, very good, I have to say. So I'll just tear a piece of this and have a taste of it. Usually I would put some butter on it, but I'll taste it as it is. Yes. Has a lovely rich flavour to it. You get the taste of the caraway seeds. Now you can leave those seeds whole. I prefer to grind them down a little bit, as I did in mine. It spreads the flavour out that little bit more. But you can leave them whole if you want to. And I get a little bite from that dried onion, which I ground down into smaller flakes, but there's some of the flakes are still there, and you get a little bit of a bite from that as well, and you get the flavour of the molasses coming through as well. So that's going to be it for this recipe. It's a very easy recipe and it's going to be lovely for sandwiches. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there'll be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.